This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Ray Hardman. How many times have you visited a movie theater since the pandemic began? While attendance numbers are back on the rise, a recent State of the Industry report from the Cinema Foundation found that more than 2,000 movie screens have gone dark since the pandemic began in the U.S. Coming up, we hear from one of Connecticut's 4 drive-in theaters that's still going strong. But first, the writers and actors strike has frozen film and TV productions across the country. The Writers Guild of America, or WGA, called a strike in May. And the Screen Actors Guild followed suit in July. We're going to hear the very latest from NPR arts correspondent Mandalit Del Barco coming up in just a few moments. But joining us now to share her experience is Olivia Nicole Hoffman. She's an actress and Connecticut native. Olivia, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me. Good morning.
You can join the conversation. Do you have experience in the film industry in Connecticut? Are you impacted by the strike? 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR, or you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Olivia, we know you were recently featured in a Hallmark movie, Aloha Heart. Tell me about that experience.
It was so awesome. It was so exciting. It was shot on Oahu. And it was magical. I was so thrilled to be involved, and it was the biggest role I'd ever had in a feature film. So I was very, very excited.
And not to get too much into Hallmark movie tropes or rom-com tropes, but you were the quirky best friend in this movie?
Yeah, I played Lydia, who was freaking out because everything's going awry, and she enlists her best friend to sort of save the day.
I got to tell you, we were, my family and I were gathered around the old laptop last night and just roaring over your TikTok videos. They are so funny.
Oh, thank you.
The automatron Titanic ride thing. It was so funny. Let me go back to Aloha Heart. You were the strike occurred while you were filming. Is that right?
Well, the writer's strike started that Tuesday of the second week of filming. So we got like all of the edits in kind of very rush, and the SAG strike started about a week and a half before the movie aired.
Okay. Was there big talk on the set about this?
Absolutely. Everyone knew there was an impending writer's strike, and when the writer's strike happened, it was seemingly the only response to that. It seems, almost positive that the SAG strike would take place.
So the big question this hour, Olivia, how has and how does the writers and actors strike affect you?
Well, it affects me in that I'm just getting my momentum going in film and TV. In the last year, really, it's picked up for me. So I'm kind of in that, I'm just happy to be here, kind of like golden retriever phase. But I also feel that it is so extraordinarily important. And I feel so much pride in knowing that my union is taking care of us. And even though this means that basically I can't work unless it's a SAG interim agreement, it still feels like in order to make a living for me as an actor, in my stage in my career, this is an incredibly important stand to be taking. And I just feel that now more than ever, we have to draw the line. So I'm very thankful for my union, and I'm very proud to be an actor right now. Right.
It does come at an inopportune time for you as you are kind of getting steam. Your career's gaining steam here. Are auditions put on hold? Is everything on hold?
Well, you would think, it's like never a dull moment as an actor. You always kind of feel like the last job you work, you're like, oh, this is the last job I'll have. Because it's like you're stitching together this quilt when you're starting out the way that I am starting out, still in that like kind of more green phase of my career.
Hmm.
But I have been auditioning like crazy in the last 2 weeks, which is unexpected, but it is all for either SAG interim agreements, or like, well, they're all SAG interim agreements, or very, very like low budget indie films, which is great because indie films are getting their moment right now. I mean, they've always had their moment, but this is the time to really support indie filmmakers.
Right, right. So we talked to one Connecticut-based actress, Callie Bollier, and she said she had returned to civilian jobs while the strike is ongoing. Is that something you're doing or something you're considering?
Well, so this is kind of unexpected, but I was just offered a job in a play. So it looks like someone dropped out of a play. And a playwright that I had worked with years ago contacted me over the weekend and was like, "Are you available?" And I'm thinking that will be my next job, and it would start in next week.
Oh, well, good for
Yeah,
you.
yeah. It's a
Okay.
shock though, because I mean, it's again, I didn't know that was going to happen. It's always this kind of vagabond like circus comes to town lifestyle. I feel kind of like just so lucky right now that this happened.
Right. Oh, gosh. Well, I want to explore more the writers and actors strike. Let's pull that apart and let's bring in one NPR reporter who's been on this story, Mandalit Del Barco. She's an arts correspondent for NPR. Mandalit, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Greetings from Los Angeles.
You must be so tired this morning.
It's early. It's 6 something in the morning, but that's fine.
Well, it's a pleasure for me to hear a voice I've just heard over and over the years. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great to be here. Thanks.
Sure. We're talking about the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild. Can you help us understand the scale and the scope of this strike?
Yeah, well, just as Olivia was describing, basically, almost all of Hollywood productions have shut down now.
Mm-hmm.
The only things that are going are these, what she was describing, interim agreements. These are productions that SAG-AFTRA has said that could continue, and these are productions that are not affiliated with the Alliance of AMPTP, Alliance of Motion Picture Television and Producers. That is the group that represents the 6 major Hollywood studios. So if a production is not one of those studios, they might be still going, although some of the writers are still have contracts with these. Anyway, it's very complicated, but there's a huge list. There's like hundreds of productions that are still going, but not the major ones. So not anything that you would see probably in a big theater like in most of the U.S.
Right.
Although I love what you said, Olivia, what you said about the indie movies are having a moment, because that's true. Independent movies, that's really cool. But anyway, but that means that if Hollywood productions are not happening, that means not just the actors and writers, that means everybody in Hollywood is impacted in some way or another. And that also affects what we're going to see on the big screen and on TV and streaming. We're still waiting to see in fall what happens on television, because nothing is being made, nothing new is being made. We're going to see a lot of reality TV shows, unscripted shows, and shows or movies that come internationally. But as far as things that are made here, that's not happening right now. Movies are being delayed. They're being pushed back to spring or maybe next, even, after that. So it affects everybody in Hollywood, and it affects all the rest of us all around the world in what we're able to see or not see. So it's huge. And this double strike like this, actors and writers, that hasn't happened since 1960. So that's a long time ago.
What are the main asks here?
Well, for both unions, I mean, they're asking for more pay, of course. That's the basic thing. They're also asking for higher residuals. That's the money that they get paid when something is re-aired, replayed on streaming services, for example. And that whole business model has changed. I've met actors and writers who say that they have a stack of checks for like 1 cent or 3 cents. This is ridiculous. Like, you're going to go to the bank and cash a check for 1 cent, but because that's what they get paid now for residuals. The other thing that they're really concerned with, especially the actors, is artificial intelligence. AI is like taking over everywhere, actually, over the world. But they're especially trying to safeguard that their work continues. I mean, I spoke to some background actors, and they said that they have been asked to have their bodies scanned so that they could be, so AI could like have their image, and they would, like, for example, if there was if they were in a huge scene, a crowd scene or a battle scene, that they could just do cut and paste and have, like, instead of hiring, thousands of actors, they would just need a couple of actors, and they would just duplicate them, and artificially put them in, CGI them, and that sort of thing. And then they wouldn't get paid. They would just get paid once, and that's it. So AI is a huge deal. Same with the writers. They don't want to have their work just, I guess, sort of plagiarized in a way,
Right. Let's talk about the state of the strike a little bit. You spoke with SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher this week. What did she share with you?
Well, she's very passionate, and we all remember her from The Nanny. And she, I don't know if you remember her, but she's very passionate about this. She's really trying to defend the actors, and also really going up against the executives in these big studios. I mean, a lot of them, Amazon, Apple, what's the other one? Netflix.
Disney.
Well, Netflix is more.
NBC Universal.
But Amazon and Apple, especially, that these are tech corporations, right? They sell all sorts of things online. So entertainment is just one of their divisions, So there's a lot of criticism of that, of the studios not caring, and they have pushback too. They have their own crisis management firm and PR agents trying to push back on that, trying to change the narrative. But so far, it seems like the actors and writers have gotten a lot of support from people out here. There's like a Gallup poll saying that that everybody supports the strikes, or a lot of people support the strikes. So so Fran was talking about that sort of thing. She's like, I hope that they don't, that at the end of the year, the executives are not getting their bonuses. If they do, I might have to call President Biden. That's what she said. So, I mean, because they're federally regulated. Right. So she said a lot of things, but things that I've heard on the picket lines. I mean, I've been out there. I think I've been to every studio's picket line multiple times, and there's a lot of passion. And months later, so the writers started in May 2nd, and they're still going strong. So are the actors. I mean, and they were already on the picket lines even before their strike was officially called. So at least in Los Angeles, you see picket lines everywhere. And and it's spread. It's not just writers and actors in Hollywood. It's like, it seems like everybody's on strike. Oh, everybody started being on strike this summer. The teachers in LA, they won their strike. They won like 30% increase in their pay. The hotel workers are on strike now. Hospital workers just down the street from me, the nurses, and you see that across the country. I don't know what's happening in Connecticut in terms of that, but I think all around the country, Amazon workers, Starbucks workers.
Sure.
Everybody seems to be unionizing right now. And it's not that the writers and actors started it, but it's just more high profile. So it's gotten a lot of people excited about going up against the man, the corporations,
Right. Mandley, good point. A reminder, you can join the conversation. Do you have experience in the film industry in Connecticut? And are you impacted by the strike? The number's 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR, or you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Keith is on the line. He's a costume designer from Connecticut. Keith, welcome to the program.
Hello, good morning.
How long have you been working out of Connecticut?
Well, I'm born and raised in Manchester, Connecticut. And then I had left and was in the city for a while. And then the pandemic brought me home. And ever since then, I've been on the road a lot, specifically around the shoreline in Connecticut, do a lot of holiday films.
Mm-hmm. What's your experience been of this strike?
Well, actually, I was filming in Ireland and Scotland when it called. First, the writers. So that was interesting because once they went on strike, you can't change the script any longer. So that was interesting. And then we finished right before the SAG strike went into effect. And then, it's just been radio silence since then. Every day I wake up and I'm like, maybe today's the day. And then, because once a deal is made, people can get back to work pretty quickly.
Right. Have you suffered financially from this?
I'm really fortunate. My spring was really stacked. I did 4 movies back to back, so I'm okay. I've been in this. This is the only thing I've ever done, so I'm always having stashing away an emergency fund just because I'm so used to not knowing working freelance. But that dwindles at some point, and if this continues on until next year, I might have to utilize my business degree in some way.
Right. What are your thoughts about working in Connecticut? You mentioned that you've been doing a lot of holiday movies near the shoreline. How does the film industry differ? Because we're going to talk about the state industry in just a few moments. How does the state film industry differ from New York City, for example?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Everybody always thinks Hollywood or you need to be in LA or New York. And Hollywood's everywhere. Different states have different tax incentives. And from what I understand, Connecticut's are pretty great. We've brought a lot of films there. I always think it comes down to my team, and I can make Hollywood wherever. I have a really great team that comes with me to Connecticut. You work a little bit differently. Sometimes if you're renting things, it's a little harder to acquire, but Connecticut's great because you're close to New York, you're close to Boston, you're close to Providence, and you can make it look like anywhere America.
Yeah. Keith, thanks so much. Mandley Del Barco, would love to hear your thoughts about Keith's experience.
Yeah, Keith, it's great to hear how you work, and Hollywood is everywhere. You're right. It's a state of mind as well. But I've talked to a lot of people. My latest story yesterday was on how people are getting by during the strike, how actors and writers are getting by, and just like Olivia said, as well. A lot of times, people in Hollywood or in the entertainment industry are sort of like freelancers or gig workers going from gig to gig. So a lot of people are used to piecing together stuff. The waiting tables, DoorDash, Postmates, Uber drivers. I met with late night TV writers. One of them works for Jimmy Kimmel Live, and instead of writing jokes, he's now making snow globes at home, which he sells on Etsy. They're on podcasts, or they're one guy is working at opening trading cards on a live stream. That's what he gets paid to do. And so people are using their creativity and their talents in different ways, or writing books. I talked to Edward James Olmos on the picket line one day, and he said his advice was just to go back to the theater, which Olivia, you said you're doing. That can't work for everybody, but some actors and it doesn't always pay. The thing is that especially for writers, in the past, you could kind of make a middle class lifestyle, own a house, raise your family with that income. That was kind of steady, because if you were on a show that went on more than one season, you were working pretty steadily. Or if you were or if you're acting in a show, you could kind of count on that in some ways. Now it seems like the whole model of these shows have changed, and there's like fewer episodes. There's maybe 6 episodes a season.
Sure.
You've seen shows like that, right? It used to be like this one guy I interviewed, his father had worked in 1959, 60 on 2 shows, and he was one of 2 writers. There were 2 writers on a show. They had 40 episodes a season.
Yeah.
So 40, and now it's like 6. So anyway, the whole thing has changed. I don't know who decided that we only need 6 episodes for a season for a show, but I guess then they go on to the next thing. But at any rate, it's really a tough business now. I mean, so many people are just getting into it now, and everybody comes to Hollywood. That's everywhere. Everybody comes to Hollywood with a talents and dreams that they're gonna be able to make a living doing this.
Sure.
And it's really tough. It's really tough. I mean, it's always been tough, but I think the economy has shown that it's even more tough at the moment than it was maybe a few years ago.
Mandalit, I want to play a clip from the owner of Synthetic Cinemas in Hartford. His name is Andrew Gernhard, and the studio works with companies like Hallmark and Netflix. Let's take a listen.
If this was a standard year, we probably would have done maybe 2 or 3 more movies before the end of the year. But now we're just basically in post-production of the current ones we have, not using Writers Guild or Screen Actors Guild. And we'll be wrapping up all of those by October for this Christmas, of course. And then we're kind of just developing and getting scripts, kind of getting an idea of what kind of scripts we want to go with next, until, the strike is over. My heart goes out to definitely the crew, the union crews that are out there, because they're like the collateral damage here, unfortunately. It was a kind of a slow year, and now it's like a dead halt. So, I think it's tough on them. It's tough on actors. It's tough on writers. It's tough on everybody. And the fall off, restaurants and hotels and support vendors are all getting hit with this thing. And to tell you the truth, I think if the strike, again, I'm no expert by any means, if the strike goes into next year, I don't even know if there's turning around from that, to tell you the truth.
Some pretty bleak news from Andrew Gernhardt. Mandalit, your response to Andrew here about this worst case scenario, do you see it making severe change in how that industry does their business?
Well, I know that the studio heads are they were at first saying, they had a big shelf of content that they could continue using. Now those shelves are getting a little bare. The David Zaslav, who heads Warner Brothers Discovery, he had told investors that if the strike goes on through the end of the year, they're going to lose $500 million. And I know in the last writer's strike in 2008, that cost the economy of Los Angeles, for example, it cost $2 billion. And that's all those people he was talking about, the collateral damage and that was just in our city, that it could be billions and billions of dollars. I just want to say the other workers are now voting to unionize. So it's, nobody's working, or very few people are working in this industry right now, but some of the ones that are saying, like, the actors and writers are on strike. Now we want to go on. We might go on strike. The video game workers, animation workers, visual effects workers at Disney and Marvel, they're all trying to join. So there's a lot of people besides the actors and writers, as as he just said too, that are impacted by this.
I don't understand, and maybe you can help me understand, why studio heads aren't jumping to take care of this.
Well, I can't speak for any studio heads per se, but I know, like I said before, some of them are tech companies. They're not necessarily entertainment entertainment companies first,
Mhm.
and some of the old legacy studios, like Paramount. Well, actually, Paramount has streaming. Disney has streaming too. I mean, most of them have streaming services
Mhm.
as well. I don't know about Sony, but anyway, there's a lot of different types of studios that are involved in this. There's the bigger ones, and then there's like the slightly less big studios. Uh, I I don't know. I can't speak for them why they're not why they're not what the problem is. And nothing is happening. They've had negotiations and then they've broken off. I know that studio heads met directly with the writers not too long ago, and it was a very short meeting, and apparently from the reports I heard, they were just like chastising the writers for not taking the deals that they had offered. I don't know. It's like the both sides are just kind of like at a stalemate, and
Yeah.
for a lot of writers and actors, they say it's an existential crisis. I mean, what's going to happen to them and the whole industry? It's not just about, getting a certain percentage of more residuals or money right now. It's about the whole thing. It's about the way everything is going. I
Right.
mean, the whole industry, I should say.
Right. Olivia and Keith are still with us, and I'd love to ask you all this question. Mandalit, I'll start with you. What's your perspective, really, big picture on shifting priorities for film and television? I mean, has this business model adapted over the years, and where does the role of art fit in?
Well, like I said, these companies, these big companies are very tech, and streaming has taken over everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not over everything, but it's a big priority for these companies. And I don't know, there's still a lot of really creative and talented people out there trying to do their thing,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a big difference in the business model. So business and art has always had a bit of a clash there, whose interest is it? But I still think that there's a lot of talent to be whatever, to be honored,
Right.
and to be celebrated there. And as I said in my story yesterday on NPR, the younger generations might not even need traditional Hollywood. They're watching TikTok and YouTube shorts. My dad just asked my daughter. She's 11. She watches movies and TV, but it's this other content too. That's out there too to entertain people. People making their own, shows and whatever, and some stuff that's really silly. But yeah.
Yeah. Olivia, real quick, your thoughts on this question.
I love what Mandalit just said
Mhm.
about making your own content. I'm a huge enforcer of that as someone who took to TikTok kind of late in the game and was like, you know what? I'm going to put my crazy brain out there and I'm just going to make whatever comes out of me because I'm an artist first, really. And it is kind of this Venn diagram that's going on right now between, for me, like merging art with business and trying to be my own like CEO of my weird traveling company as an artist. But, for me, art will always come first. And the thing that I am so moved by with this strike, really for the first time, is I feel like art can, for me personally, come kind of like rise to the top, because this actor mystique that's been going on, that's like actors are this like glamorous lifestyle, and actually it really isn't that for most of us. It really is, like I said before, this stitching together. And I feel like that is reflective of what being an artist is. I am stitching together this like big artistic quilt of my weirdness and my passion and my dreams, and that will always come first for me. And I'm really happy that every artist is making that a priority as well, because we are also not only demanding, 11% increase in residuals and AI protection, we are demanding to be seen as artists and collaborators.
Keith, what about you?
I love this question. I mentioned I have a business degree, and actually it's titled Business of Art and Design, and it focuses on the meeting of those two worlds. So, I think everything is designed. Everything around us went through a designer. Even just thinking at like content creation, like the script was created, it was casted by somebody with like an artistic vision. It trickles down to me. The costumes are designed. The platform you're looking at was designed. And that's so different than the way like traditional Hollywood, like speaking when the last strike was 1960, we consumed media completely differently and things were designed in a completely different way. I think we're at a really important inflection point. I think this is really great for labor movement in general. I'm a proud member of IATSE. And yeah, I think we're at a big inflection point and we're going to see where this goes. But art and design, it's like I'm a costume designer. So everyone's like, you're a designer, but there is so much of a business backside to it. I'm running a department looking at like labor budgets and purchasing budgets. I always say it's show business for a reason, because their business is just as big of a part as the show part.
All right, Keith, thanks for your input today. Mandalee Del Barco, NPR arts correspondent, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. This was a great conversation.
So
I love
fun.
Hearing from everybody.
Yeah. Olivia Nicole Hoffman, Connecticut native and actress, thank you.
Thank you. This was really wonderful. I honestly want to immediately run to a picket line right now and start going for it. Okay.
Coming up, we'll zoom in on Connecticut with Hearst, Connecticut reporter Alex Soul. You can join the conversation, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Ray Hardman. How has the now months-long writers and actors strike impacted movie making where we live? Here to discuss is Alex Soul, reporter for Hearst, Connecticut. Alex, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Ray.
Hey, can you give us a sense of the number of movie studios in the state and the level of business that they're doing?
Sure. And we lost a big one a couple of years ago that probably wasn't so much influenced by the strike, possibly in Blue Sky Studios, which had moved across the border from New York into that little corner of Greenwich that juts into the New York border. Disney had bought out 21st Century Fox film assets. And the moment they got their hands on Blue Sky, they shut it down, already having Disney Animation in-house and Pixar. And that was really tough for the Connecticut industry, because Blue Sky Studios was one of the 2 or 3 real kind of triumphs of the tax credit program that Keith had mentioned earlier, where it was created in the 2009 timeframe. And Blue Sky came right across to take advantage of it. And they cashed in more than $250 million in credits on $1 billion worth of production. And obviously they had the whole Ice Age series that was a huge success. So, Disney pulled the plug on that in favor of Pixar and Disney Animation. So we lost that. And if you look at what's, I believe had been referenced as Hollywood East, we have not benefited from that. And it's striking that New York and now New Jersey have. And so when you look at growth in the industry in over 5 years, Deloitte did a study. They found that employment in California dropped 4 or 5% in that time frame for the film and TV industry. New York's grew 17% to about 80,000 people. And New York, California, and Georgia have all added 1 million square feet of production space in a 5-year block through 2022. Connecticut has not. So we got NBC Sports coming across, which with ESPN made us kind of a sports locus. We had Blue Sky Studios, which we lost. And then we've just had some smaller activity and nothing on the scale of what's to come. Now, over in Yonkers, they've just opened the Lionsgate Studios, which will have about 1 million square feet of space. Robert De Niro is opening a new studio down in Manhattan, and there's another one down there, which combined, those will have approaching 1 million square feet of space. And then the big one is Netflix, and that's going to be down at the old Fort Monmouth in New Jersey. And it's going to be massive. It's going to be close to 300 acres. Massive development that the state of New Jersey is backing. And it's frustrating here in Connecticut from an economic perspective, because when you hear about Connecticut tax credits, they're usually mentioned in the same breath with New Jersey's and Georgia's as among the best, or rather most generous in the industry. But we just haven't benefited from it the way New York did with the Yonkers Film Studio, and now New Jersey with Netflix.
So we have one of the most generous tax breaks for television and movie production with no cap. Why has Connecticut not been able to seize the opportunity here?
There's always a question of a film zone that circles New York City. So you can go 25 or 30 miles out from Columbus Circle, and after, depending on the union, after you get outside that radius, it becomes less economically advantageous for companies based on union kinds of payment structures. Now, that line cuts just west of the Stamford train station. So and Blue Sky was within that line. Mm-hmm. So you can argue that if that line was further out, then a place like Bridgeport, which has a lot of, excess industrial space that perhaps could be repurposed for a film studio, would make a lot of sense. But it hasn't happened. And way back in the early days, some of the listeners may remember that there was going to be a Hollywood East in Bridgeport, the old Stratford Army engine plant on the harbor there.
Right.
And then even up in South Windsor, there was going to be a Connecticut Studios that had been bandied about. Neither of those projects have gone forward. More recently, an actor, Michael J. White, has proposed a New Haven studio, but we haven't heard much about that in the past year or so.
Has the state legislature had any desire to tweak this tax program if it's not working as great as in other states?
The tweak already occurred. And so they initially kind of had a very broad-based tax credit that encouraged a lot of one-and-done productions. So Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was filmed a little bit at Yale, New Haven, and Revolution Road with Leonardo DiCaprio was filmed here. They quickly saw that was kind of lightning hits where people were coming in from out of state to film and then they were leaving. There wasn't a lot of economic impact. So they tweaked it and they said, listen, in order to cash in on the 30% credit, you've got to really build up a ton of production work. So half of the shooting days have to be here and half of the production expenses, or more than 1 million in production expenses. And so what that really gears it toward is more permanent studios. But we're an expensive state to do business. So whereas you've seen Georgia just expanding like wildfire, and Tyler Perry has a hugely expanded new studio down there, and NBC Universal is moving in this moment to the new Assembly Studios outside Atlanta, which is just going to be another massive studio down there. They've got 4 in the works right now, and probably more lined up after that. It is frustrating, and particularly since NBC Universal knows us very well. It's owned by Comcast, but obviously there are the NBC Universal talk shows in downtown Stamford and NBC Sports in Stamford.
Do you foresee the state legislature doing more to change this tax program around?
I think that it's more likely that they'll try to repurpose the money. In fact, Governor Lamont's outgoing economic chief, either earlier this year or late last year, basically said the state should do that. And he said, listen, we've got less than $1 million in benefit on $500 million in activity. These are dollars that could be better put somewhere else. And there's a group in the Connecticut General Assembly that tried to get a law through which would start to enact some of those changes, but it didn't happen. Now, it's just, again, very frustrating because you just see probably well over 2 million square feet of space either having just been developed or under development in the greater New York City area, and we're not participating in that. And so, people like Keith, and there's a lot of people like Keith in Connecticut where they're very talented and they've got tremendous contacts with the New York City ecosystem. I bet you they wouldn't mind having Netflix in their own backyard, but it's not going to happen here. And it just looks like it's not a point of emphasis for the legislature nor the governor anymore, although we like, the productions that do film here.
Alex Sohl, reporter for Hearst, Connecticut. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks.
Coming up, we spotlight one of Connecticut's 4 drive-in movie theaters. You can join the conversation, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Ray Hardman. This hour we've been discussing how the months-long writers and actors strike out of Hollywood is impacting us here in Connecticut. But what about moviegoing? Connecticut has lost its share of movie theater screens in recent years, but still boasts 4 drive-in theaters, keeping this American tradition alive. You can find out more information about drive-ins in the state and see a mini documentary about the Mansfield Drive-In on our website at ctpublic.org/where we live. Joining us now is Naomi Jungden. She's general manager of the Mansfield Drive-In. Naomi, welcome to the program.
Hey there. Thanks so much to have me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so excited because really one of my first memories of ever going to the theater is getting into my pajamas with my brother and my cousins and getting into the station wagon and heading out to the drive-in. My mom would make this huge bag of popcorn. Tell me, how did you get into doing this thing? How did you take over the Mansfield Drive-In?
Yeah, so it's been a family business, which is really cool in itself. I feel like that's something that's kind of not as common as it used to be. Mm-hmm. So my dad started managing it in 1974. So my sister and I grew up there pretty much. So I too have very similar memories of, piling into my mom's minivan and going to the drive-in. And he unfortunately passed away in 2020.
Sorry.
Oh, thank you. I had come back to help him run the drive-in in 2018. So I'm very thankful to, have been able to have, at least those 2 years of, experience, in a different role. Like
right.
I grew up working at the, 12 years old, I was the soda girl. When I was 18, I became like a shift leader. I've always been there. I moved out, went to college elsewhere and, like I said, came back in 2018. Then my sister ended up coming back in 2020, I believe. And so now it's her and I pretty much running it together. My mom does a lot of things behind the scenes too, so she's definitely in it. But yeah.
We have a clip of your father from the mini doc we mentioned before about the Mansfield Drive-In. Let's take a listen to him.
Just thought that there was a way to make it work and that I could make something happen. And I was also thinking about the fact that someday I'd be the only one doing this.
Naomi, running this drive-in was really a mission for him, right?
Oh, absolutely. It was, yeah. It was, even more so than a mission. It was his life,
Naomi, what makes a good drive-in movie?
There's a few different genres that do really, really well on a drive-in. Of course, we're very family oriented, so the family films do quite well. People get really excited about it. The drive-in is different than an indoor theater because you can be more social at a drive-in. Indoor theaters are awesome, and I definitely go to the indoor theater during our off season, and it's nice that I don't even feel like the two business models are in competition with each other because we offer such different things. So the drive-in, you can talk with your friends. If if you have a little one that, as little ones do, sometimes come a little unglued, it's okay. Nobody's going to be shushing you. You don't have to leave. You're in the comfort of your own car. So a lot of the family films do quite well here. Everywhere. Barbie did really well this year, but that was our big show of the season.
So you're running first releases.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. We'll do, every year we'll bring back some fun, retro films. we did have Jaws this year. That's always one that looks just so, it's classic on a drive-in screen. But in general, yeah, we're a first run theater.
We're quickly running out of time, which I really regret, but I have so many questions. How have you seen things change over the years in the drive-in movie business?
So there's definitely been some changes, but we have done our best to keep it 1950s feel. We've really gone out of our way to try and maintain that nostalgia of, coming to a drive-in theater. So our snack bar and our setup is very, very, it's like coming into a time capsule. We want people to kind of forget what year it is when they're here. That being said, of course, things have updated behind the scenes. We have newish digital projectors. A lot of my movie bookings on Mondays are done via email instead of calling the studios themselves. I just shoot an email to my rep and we negotiate terms. Of course, now we take credit cards, we take Apple Pay, we take Cash App, there's online tickets.
What about the box that you put on the window for the sound? Do you still do that?
We had those until last year or until this year.
Okay.
So we still have them. We decided to try not putting them up this year, mainly because all of those little speakers are 1950s to 1970s vintage. So they provide 1950s and 1970s vintage sound. And sound quality, and that's not something that people are used to hearing. So we broadcast through an FM radio station for, a different one for each of the 3 screens. And we also have radio rentals in the snack bar. So, for the people that don't want to use their car radio, don't have a car radio, want to sit outside and not blast their radio. We do have an option for them.
I've got one more quick question for you before we have to go. You've been listening along this hour. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the magic of movie going, something maybe that you've witnessed over the course of your life.
Yeah. One thing that was said that kind of hit me a little bit was that, we now live in an era where people can create their own content. And I know that that's a very lighthearted thing to say, but it's kind of a scary thing to hear as a small business owner that really relies on Hollywood. That I can't put TikToks up on the screen. I really rely on, movies to come through. So hoping that there's going to be a resolution, because we are just now starting to feel the impact of the writer's strike. Our October release schedule is looking a little bleak. We may end up doing some retro films, Halloween classics, which people always love. But some really interesting things that were brought to the table during the last hour for sure.
Yeah. Naomi Jungden, General Manager of the Mansfield Drive-In, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
You can find more information about the Mansfield Drive-In, show times, and how to get tickets on our website at ctpublic.org/wherewelive. I'm Ray Hardman. Today's show was produced by Katie Pellico. Our technical producer is Kat Pastor. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app.